Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Subscription Box Basics. This is Julie Ball, your host. And if you listened to the last couple episodes, you'll by now that I sold my subscription box, Sparkle, Hustle, Grow. It was just time for my next season. So if you haven't listened to those, go back 2 episodes and why I sold my business. And then last week's episode was how I sold my business. And as promised, today's episode is with Christine from the Magnolia Firm, who helped me sell Sparkle, Hustle, Grow. She was my business intermediary. We're going to talk about so much. You guys, get your pen and paper ready, because if you've ever thought about an exit strategy, this is the episode for you. And if you haven't thought about an exit strategy, maybe this will kind of change your mind about it. So I would love to introduce you guys to Christine. Welcome to the podcast.
Yes, thanks for having me, Julie. So excited to be here.
Awesome. Okay, so they've heard about you already, but so many will be meeting you for the first time. Can you just give a little introduction and tell a little bit about your background?
I would love to. So I have been an entrepreneur of 18 years now, almost 19. So I've started about 10 of my own businesses in all sorts of industries. And then I did an additional, either acquisitions or buy sell. So I have 20 under my belt already personally.
Crazy.
And then last year, and we just started the firm in October of 2021, because a lot of my girlfriends were selling their companies. They're like, oh, Christine, you've done it yourself so many times. Because I only used a broker on the first one. And then I learned what to do after that. So yeah, that's kind of my history. I was the girl that had the lemonade stand, selling out of my backpack candy bars. And I was born to do this. I love business. I love structuring deals because every deal is so different. So yeah, it's nice to be kind of that intermediary in the middle. And each business I get to dive in and learn to the point where I know their business just as well as they do at the end of the transaction, because I'm in pretty deep with the businesses, which is fun.
Yeah. And your firm's based out of San Diego, right?
Yep.
Oh, I love San Diego. We've got family there and we're going to come out and visit real soon. So I cannot wait to hopefully meet you in person one day. I am really excited that you have this background of selling your own businesses and then selling businesses of people who are close to you, because if you trust yourself and your friends are trusting you to sell your business, now you have so much experience.
Yes, for sure. When we opened in October, we closed 5 transactions in just the month of December. To put that in perspective, I think the typical broker does 2 a year. And we've averaged 10 transactions the last 10 months, which has been wild. I have 2 team members that are incredible.
Yep.
So they do a lot of and you get to deal with them too, and they're amazing.
I do.
Yeah, so that's very helpful. I wouldn't be able to do that without them. So they're pre-qualifying the buyers, lots of leads coming in. I only want to bring the best possible leads to my seller, like Julie, where it's we're going to get on Zoom for 30 minutes, but these are super pre-qualified buyers that have access to capital. That's huge. Yeah, so it's fun.
I'm glad you brought that up, because in the last episode, I talked about that, because I was saying how the topic was how I sold my business. And I said, there's so many conversations in that transaction that I wasn't equipped to do, nor did I want to DIY. And that's why I had you guys. You were having all those conversations that I didn't know how to. And when you would call me and say, we've got a potential buyer, I knew that wasn't going to be a tire kicker. I knew that you guys had already talked to them. You had already talked about money. You had already talked about the business, had an NDA signed, all these things. And it just made it so easy, so much easier for me. So I think where I want to take this conversation to start with is, you call yourself a business intermediary. Most people probably heard of the word broker, similar thing, right? And what does that person do?
Yeah, I love using that term. So unfortunately, business broker has a horrible reputation. And I know I could tell a million horror stories. And so I don't want to get lumped into that, because again, I was consulting, and it's just a different style I do. And a business intermediary, technically they're a go-between and a mediator, which is really cool, because I'm passionate about working with buyers, especially first-time buyers. So I'm holding their hand through the process. I really love that, being that middle person and and just creating win-wins. I really believe in a win-win. And yeah, me coming on those Zoom pitches, and Julie pitched so well every single time, so brought so much energy, and just was so great about selling her business and explaining it. But it's fun. And then I'm coming in having the difficult conversation. If they bring up on the Zoom, okay, if they try to negotiate, or then I'm stepping in, right? We made a good team. She's like, Christine's can answer that, how the process works and the LOI and how fast can we get that? And then I step in, because that's really natural. I have no problem asking for money and asking for the contract, next steps, urgency, we got to move.
And I just remember going to your website for the first time, and you had so many things on there that I was just yes, that's what I need. And you're like, we make the difficult conversations easy. We make this, what could be a really stressful situation, we help you sell your business with grace and with ease. And I was like, oh, that's exactly what I need. And so when we first met, you walked me through what to expect. Like, okay, Julie, when we do these pitch calls, you're going to tell the story of your business, be upfront about why you're selling. If there's an elephant in the room, like if there's something that is wrong with your business, or if there's a concern about your business, or if you have made a mistake, like I've made mistakes in my business, let's just talk about it now. And then anytime the questions on those pitch calls went in a direction where I was like, Christine, you want to take this one? You always jumped right in there and you were like, yes, and this is how it's going to work. And I was just so grateful to have that person, you, in my corner.
Yeah. And just getting creative. I do more due diligence on taking a listing than the buyer does, I swear.
Yeah.
I'm like,
well, tell us what due diligence is. Like some people might not know what that means.
So due diligence is like all the verification. That's when they're digging. The buyer's committed. They write an LOI, letter of intent. And so they're digging in. We know they're serious and we know they're qualified. I'm real protective of my seller's information. So then they're diving in and asking questions and we package all that up. So that's going to be like a P&L and that's going to be owner's duties. Like we're structuring, we're building all that out in the beginning. Yes. And Julie was up front with me and said, hey, I accidentally for months forgot to charge a few people shipping. And it was like a substantial amount.
Yeah, that's a podcast episode for another day.
Yeah. But again, it takes somebody like myself who's been in that world. And I'm sure I did a similar thing before where I know I can add that back. Like, and some brokers wouldn't have caught that where it's like, okay, you made a boo. We're going to notate it. What happened? Yep. So, I mean, the buyers should accept that because we fixed and then fix it. Right. You know, and your clients are so amazing that they were like cool with it, knew because you were transparent. And so we fixed it before we sold it.
And I want to focus on that word transparency. I think that was really important because in the end, before you close, their accountant, the buyer's accountant, goes into your QuickBooks and looks at it. So you don't want to hide anything. You don't want them to fall into some sort of surprise that's going to delay the closing or even prevent the closing. So that was one of the things that as you and I, Christine, were working together, I really learned a lot about my books and learning about expenses and how to make better decisions. And it just makes me much better equipped now to coach on it as well.
And then just one last point on the due diligence process.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Julie got from there. So the buyer will usually present, a lot of times I'll present one, or I'll ask them up front, hey, what kind of items do you need to go through?
Yeah.
We provide a lot up front already. What else do you need? And so they provided, what was it, a 15-page list of, and I told you, I'm like, oh my, it's the longest one I've ever seen, because they had a great team and great lawyers that deal with multi-million-dollar companies. So I'm like, Julie, don't get overwhelmed. If you just put an A, but like a lot of it's not going to apply. Yeah. But Julie was so great and organized about just knocking things out, which I appreciate. And then last point on that is if they find any white lie during the process, the buyer's going to be like, what else are they lying about?
Yeah.
You lose so much trust. So it's like, hey, let's be transparent. Let's have integrity through the whole process. Same with me, right? I'm not going to say, oh, we have multiple offers if we don't. Like, I'm not. Yeah.
Well, and that's the same thing. Like, you wouldn't want to come to a business intermediary and say, I need to sell my business for one reason when really it's another reason. You definitely want to be transparent along the way. Because I've had people say to me, I'm going through this in my family where I have to take care of my parent now, an aging parent, and I no longer have the time to run this business. Or for me, we were ready for our next season. I wanted to be more available for my family and double down on my coaching. So let's talk about what are some scenarios where someone might sell their business. Some people, all they do is talk about launch a business, but sometimes things change and you might need to offload the business. You might need to close it for some reason, or you might need to sell it. So what are some scenarios that you've seen people sell their business?
Yeah, great question. A couple of ours are retiring, right?
Oh yeah. And, okay.
Yeah. Some retire, which is cool. Yeah. And they just go do whatever they want to do. I think that's a big one. I think we have a lot like yourself that are parallel entrepreneurs, which means they run two ventures simultaneously. Yeah. So that's a few. They're moving on to their next venture is another. And those are all great stories.
And I think because not a lot of people talk about an exit strategy, I was sharing in a previous episode that I felt a little guilt at first. And like, I was afraid to tell people I was going to sell my business because I didn't want to let anybody down. But I can tell you now that I'm on the other side, I got nothing but love and support and congratulations. And when you're clear in your why, like why I was selling my business, people are like, good for you. You know what I mean? So if you're listening to this and you're thinking about selling your business, there's no wrong answer to that. Like if you want to focus on something else, or if you have another area of your life that needs you, all of those are valid reasons. And you don't need anybody's permission to sell your business.
Yeah. And I remember you being so worried about that. And I gave you examples of ones we just sold, other subscription boxes. And every client, once they sell, I wait a few weeks and I'll go on their Facebook page. And once they make the announcement, I'm curious what people say. And every single time it's like, congratulations, we're so happy for you. We're so proud of you. Myself too. I'm like, oh my gosh, like how am I going to tell my clients? And they're always so excited for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Okay. So why should someone use a broker? Like, why should we not just try to figure this out ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, technically, nobody needs a broker, kind of like selling your house. You could do like for sale by owner, right?
Right.
Business is similar. So people think, oh, I have to have a broker or lawyer. No, you really don't necessarily. But like kind of all the points you made earlier, like the data room, the letter of intent, like nobody knows what that even is.
Yeah.
And I feel like you don't want to be an unsophisticated seller because you'll get taken advantage of. You'll be uncomfortable. You might cave on price because because you're so personally involved. It's just kind of awkward. Again, you don't want to be the bad guy, so you might not negotiate as strong as I do. Yeah. So I think those would be the main reasons. And again, a broker, a business advisor, consultant, an intermediary, I think a lot of them are similar in what their offering is.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where it's like, you don't know what you don't know. I've heard of due diligence before, but I didn't really know what that encompassed. Things like trademark transfer and things like what's the software stack. And some of that stuff made sense to me, but some of it, I never would have thought of that. And you bring those skills to the table. And the other thing that I really love about working with you is I wanted a really good relationship with the new buyers. I wanted to have a solid handoff, a graceful handoff where I was handing the baton over. And I wanted our subscribers to feel like they were going to be taken care of. If I had to have those hard conversations about the negotiations around the money, or even just putting down the deposit, the earnest money, all of those conversations can lead to awkwardness in our relationship. But I didn't have to have those because you had those for me on my behalf.
Yes. And I don't mind it. Like I'm super comfortable. And again, I'm that neutral third party that's just guiding the process because they weren't represented. Again, most of our buyers aren't for whatever reason. Yeah. They weren't necessarily represented on their side. So it was easy for me to work with them too. They're great. And that's the thing I'm most proud of. I have to tell you is maybe we get great terms like all cash offers and sell quickly, great purchase prices, a lot of times above normal multiples. But I always tell everybody I'm the most proud of the buyers we find every single transaction. They're so amazing. My sellers are so excited because it's almost like a baby you're handing over. My biggest exit was my wellness spa here in San Diego, having right now their 10-year anniversary. So I had it for 5 and my buyers had it for 5. And I'm like, oh my gosh, but they're amazing husband and wife. They kept my team. My team loves them. My manager stayed. Like, it's really magical.
Oh, that's awesome. And you can just feel so happy for them as you were a part of it. Oh, I love that. Okay. So someone might be thinking about like, do I want to do this myself or do I want to have a business broker or an advisor? So what are some of the questions that they just absolutely have to ask them so that they're well prepared and they know that they've hired the right person?
I have a PDF that I'm going to share with you. Maybe just put a link.
Yeah, I will.
Questions to ask a broker. I'm blown away at really, it's rare these people even ask me these questions, which I think are important. Of all my testimonials on our website, I always offer, hey, I'll put you in touch with any of those people. So checking references also. What's their background? Have they been a business owner ever? Because I feel like you have to be. How long have they been a broker? What's their closing percentage? Here's a crazy statistic. So ours is 100. And that's why we're so picky. I only take people that I know we can sell for sure. This is a real stat is that only 20% of businesses that are listed for sale actually sell. That means 80% just shut down. Isn't that crazy? And it's devastating. We're not even counting all the people that just burn out And so I want your listeners to know that too. Don't get to the massive, but when you start getting a little burnout, it might be time to sell. And that's when I decide on and it's always the 5-year mark. I don't know why. I think because everything's systematized by then. I've got managers in place and I'm not really needed. So I'm bored. So that's when I sell. I'm just like, it's not fair to my clients or my team if I'm just kind of over it. That's when I decide to sell. But if you're beyond burned out, then it'll be very hard to get through the selling process, even with an intermediary, because it's like a lot. And we take a lot of it off the plate. What else for brokers? Their average sales price.
And what was your average number of days on market?
It's when you came on, it was, what was it?
It was 70 something.
Yeah, it was 77 because we were just going so fast. Some of those were smaller deals though.
Sure.
So when I move up market, taking longer to sell right now, 188, I believe is average. And then I think we're right now at like 120.
But it is realistic that someone could close within 3 to 6 months of chatting with you or a broker or enlisting their business. If you've prepared your business, if you are excited about it and pitching it well and have the numbers really tight.
Yeah. Our record was 21 days flat from start to finish with all cash offer, 325,000.
Oh my gosh.
The other subscription box, I know. So that one was fun. It was wild, but I could close them. But yeah, it's just, we have such amazing systems in place where it's just like, boom, all the way down to when the money's wired in the account.
We were 94 days on market.
Yeah. That's awesome. 3 months. Yes. So average is 6 to 12 months for other brokers.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So if someone might be listening, they're probably thinking, okay, maybe this is something I might do. What are some of the first steps that someone needs to do to prepare to sell their business?
I mean, this is where I'm just going to pitch Julie because she is so modest. I mean, the most organized person, the most on top of things, hardest worker. And I love, love, love that you still spend time with your family and you have that time. So you have this amazing work-life balance and you still pull a lot off. So yeah, I've already sent her a few clients that are either needing to prep for sale, right? Or just like start working on it, right? Like anytime. I don't think a lot of people have an exit strategy. Entrepreneurs, like, did we have a start strategy? Not really. We just fall into it, we jump into it. So when people give them a hard time, oh, you didn't have an exit strategy, you didn't prepare. No, I get it, right? My clients are like, I wanted to sell yesterday. I'm like, okay, let's go. So I think it is helpful getting the accounting software really dialed in. Very clean books is always helpful. Solid team in place, a playbook or operational book.
Let's talk about that. Yeah, playbook. So I had done standard operating procedures in the past, SOPs, but you gave me this idea of this playbook where you put all the links in one. Like, this is just, for me, it makes so much sense. I don't know why I didn't think of it before, but we created one document that had all the links to all the different Loom videos or SOP documents. And we could literally hand that over as the training manual. And that was something that I had to do some work on. And I explained that in my last episode where I had to update some things because they hadn't been updated in about 2 years. But I'll tell you what, going through that and talking to you about my business gave me renewed excitement about the business. Like, oh man, I love what we've built and I love our subscribers. And oh, this process makes it so simple. And going through that, you, Christine, opened my eyes to like that we had built something really good. And I think I had lost that zest for it in the past 12 months because it was hard. I felt very spread thin. And so that was definitely a bright spot that I wasn't expecting through the sale of my business, was to get so passionate about it again.
Yeah, no, and we've heard that so many times. One we did last year was doing 20 million a year in revenue, 20 years in business. And I find, because you guys are in the weeds all the time, so you don't even see this stuff. And so I'm finding all the little gems. Like, you've done this, you've done that, this and that. So I'm good at finding the gems and pulling them. And you guys get all excited. I'm like, holy cow, look what you built. And so every single one says that, because we're kind of highlighting all that stuff when we position it to sell.
Yeah. And so you can probably talk to this more than I can, but one of the things that's important about the business, if you're trying to sell it for a good number, it needs to be profitable, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. And yeah, but at the same token, it breaks my heart when someone closes altogether. Because there might be assets, you got inventory, probably you can sell off. You have a strong reputation, you might have a strong brand. So still talk with people, even reach out to me. We've had a few coming across that they don't have profit for buyer, because that's what a buyer, they're buying an income, they might be leaving their job, so they need that. But again, I have to say there's not assets to still sell off, like liquidate. So
sure. Well, and the reason why I brought that up is because when you start thinking about selling a business, you don't have to sell it tomorrow. You can start planning. I started looking up and researching what an exit strategy looks like, selling with business, what that looks like a year ago before I sold my business. And that gave me a full season of 12 months of, okay, what do I need to shift in my business to make it more profitable? In 2021, we raised our prices. Our profit margin got stronger. That is good for a buyer when they look at that and they think about potential opportunities for growth. That profit margin is strong. So if you're thinking about that right now and you're listening and you're like, well, I'm not making that much yet. We'll take a deep dive in those books. Look at what's your software stack. Is there anything that you can remove that is not necessary? One of the things that I figured out, Christine, as I was going through this is that I feel like I sometimes make things more complicated than they need to be. I realized that every 3 to 6 months, Renee and I on my team, we would launch a new project because we just needed that excitement. We needed a new project to work on. But had we not done that, like the business could have been so much more leaner and simpler. And as we were preparing the business for sale, we started pulling some of those more complicated things out of the mix. And it was just like, like everything got easier. The profit margins were good. And so the reason why I'm bringing this up is if you're listening and you're worried that your business isn't profitable yet, figure it out, like look at that and say, okay, what do I need to change to make it profitable? What do I need to fix in my business? And it doesn't have to be fixed by tomorrow. This isn't a race. This is, you have time to figure it out. So that's my feedback on preparing.
This is another crazy stat. A lot of the exits, what you're taking, it actually is equal or more to what you netted out on the history of the business. Right? Like it really is. So that's important. So if you're doing like a 3 multiple, every little bit counts. Then let me speak to the add backs. So Julie's exactly right. I think increasing prices is going right to the bottom line. Maybe you lose a couple of people, maybe, but the difference you're going to make on that increase is going to surpass that. That's a hack that we usually tell our clients right out the gate because some have never raised their prices. And especially now with inflation, it's like easier.
Right.
Then I'm going to my P&L and I'm cutting expenses as much as I can. Because again, that's going to the bottom line.
Yep.
Okay, add backs though, because you're going to say, oh, I'm not going to run stuff through my business. Everybody does. That's what the tax code's written in our advantage for business owners. Don't be afraid if it's like your car, your health insurance, because we're going to add that back to the bottom to your profit also. And we're going to specify you're not going to have this expense anymore.
Yeah, I think when I was looking through the expenses, and this was one of the conversations that we had with our new owners before we closed, we were talking about the P&L and the expenses. And I said, there's a lot of expenses in there for travel, for example, and that might be me going to speak on stage about coaching. And because both of my businesses were in the same LLC, they all poured into the same bank account. In hindsight, I would have separated those from the get-go, but I would tell them, this is not an expense that you will have in the future. Travel is like one of my love languages. So I'm going to do as much business travel as possible, but you could legit run this business part-time from your home, not have any of those expenses. And I think that was important for me to understand because travel expenses can add up, and personal development, for example, those were things that I chose to do. I wanted to learn about public speaking. So I took a public speaking course in person here in Asheville, but also an online one. And as you're looking through all of those expenses, those are not the core operating, I don't remember what you called them, but the operating expenses of the business. Those were things that were me. Like I was doing that for me, my personal development for the business. So when I removed stuff like that from the bottom line, I was like, oh, this profit margin is very good. I'm very happy with this.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. No, I love that. That's exactly what people need to dial in and concentrate on. And yeah, that's huge.
Think about the essentials. If we're just running this business, nothing else beyond it, what do you need to run this business?
Yeah, and definitely separate your books. And I'm a parallel entrepreneur too. I ran multiple companies through my QuickBooks together, separate it. And then being a remote business, e-com business, remote, working from home, that's a huge advantage we've learned, right? You're not a brick and mortar. Those are harder to sell.
Okay. So if someone is interested in working with you, let's tell them a little bit about some of your firm's core values. Because when we first met, you had asked me a couple questions that I was like, okay, these are questions that I want her to ask me. Like, are you emotionally ready to sell your business? And are you willing to see this through to the finish line? You're not just going to be like, okay, I'm selling, so I'm going to stop working on the business.
Yeah.
So what are some of the Magnolia Firm's core values?
I already mentioned integrity. That's
Mhm.
huge. I mean, I don't want to even hear a little tiny white lie at all from anybody,
Yeah.
especially the seller. That's happened to me with the seller. And it's in our contract that we'll end the contract if we
Wow.
find out the seller lied about something. Because
Misrepresentation.
it's just not worth it. And so the manifesting step, I don't know how woo some of your listeners are. I mean, I definitely am. So it's like manifest, write out that exact perfect scenario. I want to sell by this date for this much. The more detailed you can be, the better. I want this kind of a buyer, this age, her name is this, like that avatar. Julie has the best client avatar I've ever seen in my life, like ever seen. So like doing the same thing for a potential buyer and tape that somewhere we're going to see it every day. We're big into manifesting. So I attract really cool clients because they get it.
Yeah.
So those would be the main core values. And another one is, this is literally, and I've ran 5 marathons, so I get it. This is literally mile 23 of a 26-mile race that you're about to sprint. And I tell my sellers, you have to put the pedal to the metal. It's going to be probably just as hard as when you start up. Just be ready. And that's how we're getting those high multiples, because these people are seeing you grow while you're selling. And then we do this cool thing. Once we got our buyer, we're going due diligence, all that fun stuff. And then we do these fun weekly emails. I almost had my own deal fall out.
Oh, I love those. Yes.
Yeah. So those, I had 3.5 months because it was freaking SBA loan. That's why I don't like SBA loans. And then they do business appraisal. And again, I always get high multiples. The appraisal went in like 30% less. It was a lot of money. And I swear, if I didn't do those Monday little excitement emails, and we say, hey, you guys might think the seller's going to take their foot off the pedal because now it's sold and they don't care anymore, but we're not. And every week we're going to send you this really great email from the owner. These were the initiatives we did this week. These were our sales. Just keeping them super engaged.
So those weekly updates, it was really fun because throughout the week, I would make notes of exciting things that happened. So for example, when we secured the book, Jenna Kutcher's book, that was a really big deal for us because she is so awesome and the book is great. And it took some creative budgeting to make it work. And I was so excited to announce in that weekly email to our new buyers, hey, guess what? Guess who we just secured as our upcoming guest expert for your first full month as owner. And that got them just really excited. And they could see that I was still pouring into the business. So I love that. And Christine, when we first started working together, you sent me a link to a questionnaire. And that's where it all started, where you're like, who's your ideal buyer? What would that dream number be if someone offered you for your business right now? And I'm part woo, I'm not full woo, but those things started getting me thinking about that. And one of the things I loved about your team was they wrote the business listing in a way to really attract that person who I said was my ideal buyer.
Yeah, I love that. Our team spends like a couple full days crafting all that. Lauren's amazing at copywriting, and then I'm looking through it and adding some key things. I like this because you want to set up the new owner for success. It feels good. You want your team to be happy. You want the business to succeed.
Yes.
I've only had one that closed down out of all in the last 18 years, which is so crazy. And the same owners like kept them. It's really cool.
So, all right. So let's kind of pull it back together here. What do you love most about what you do?
Oh my gosh. I eat, sleep, and breathe business. It's my favorite sport in the world. Seriously. I'm just happy to find a buyer and they could take it on. Entrepreneurship, I mean, that's at my core. I don't know if it's called my identity, and that's fine if it is too. I mean, I just went on a 10-day vacation, completely unplugged, no Wi-Fi, no email. My team just held it down. My clients knew I was gone, and I haven't done that in 3 years. And so I made a rule. Okay, Christine, don't talk about business at all. Just don't. Then it was 4 days in, I was having this great conversation with some guys and they were like, hey, what do you do for a living? I was later in the convo. And then I told them, oh, business intermediary, acquisitions, M&A, blah, blah, blah. And the one guy was like, oh my, that's what I do. But I have these auto part oil stores in Washington, and we're just buying our third. And he told me how he structured each one, the terms. So we were just like sharing tips and tricks. Nice. And I was lit up. So I was like, you know what? Like this stuff lights me. I know, it's so funny. I'm not making that rule anymore. If I want to talk business, if it comes up naturally, then we're going to talk about it. But and even on the ride out there, another guy is in M&A. It was so crazy. And I didn't know him. He's San Francisco and he's working on a $1.2 billion acquisition. I was like, what are the odds? I talked to people in my industry.
That's awesome. Sounds like this really lights you up. What are you most proud of?
Again, finding amazing buyers for my sellers, 100% closing ratio, and I'll do whatever it takes. So let's get creative. Don't worry. That perfect buyer finally falls in our lap. And then we're like, oh my gosh, this is great.
Well, I am so grateful that I found you and that I had such a good experience with you. And I know I'm going to share some links to that PDF you were talking about, but where else can people follow you or connect with you if they have questions or just want to learn more about this industry?
Yeah, definitely our website, reach out. We have a great team where I can speak with you. And then we have some fun social media accounts now. It's on TikTok, it's on Instagram, the Magnolia Firm. And then we've got Broker Bob, because I wanted to be entertaining on TikTok. I had never used TikTok. I'm like, I know Julie's laughing because she's seen him. Yeah. So I dress up as a business broker, as an old man. I'm in character. I have an accent and gray mustache. You guys will see. I just want to be entertaining. And I want to teach people things.
Yeah.
And these are true stories. And these are things that people do not know behind the scenes. So we just poke fun.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, he's a fictional character. So you're just kind of poking fun at the traditional way of looking at things. And you don't have to look at things traditionally. I chose to work with a business intermediary like you because of the way you showed up and what your website said and the people, the references that you presented before we went into contract together. And it's like, that's who I want to do business with. I left corporate America for a reason. I don't want to deal with that. And as business owners and entrepreneurs, I know that is a big reason why we do this, is because we want that flexibility. We want to build the life of our dreams. And it doesn't necessarily have to fit someone else's rule book or what traditionally business looks like. So I think it's super funny. It cracks me up. And I'll make sure I put all the links in the show notes so that people can follow along. So
Yeah.
Christine, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so grateful to have you in my corner. I'm so grateful to introduce you to our audience. And you guys, I hope that you take a minute to follow her on social media and look into this, because you never know. This might not be something that is an exit strategy, might not be what's right for you right now, but who knows in 6 months. Just learning some of that makes you a better business owner to be prepared for whatever life throws at you. So again, thank you, Christine, for joining me on the podcast today. You guys, thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.